Hey there, self-care warriors. So I've noticed this recent trend of people misusing their credentials to spread these myths about malignant narcissists and psychopaths, and how we shouldn't demonize them, and how we need to view them in a sympathetic light, how they must come from backgrounds of trauma, and that there's a possibility that they can change. Now, there are plenty of people with doctoral degrees and mental health professional training who will tell you otherwise, and they use their credentials responsibly to help survivors of abuse leave their abusers and to learn the manipulation tactics. However, there are going to be always a select few that rationalize, deny, and minimize abusive behavior, and they try to paint abusers, regardless of their disorder, in a sympathetic fashion. And I really want to dispel some of these myths, right? Because I do think these articles and posts do spread a lot of misinformation about abusers, and they give survivors false hope, and they give survivors this false hope that they should hold on to their abuser because they might change in the future if they just stay long enough, if they just hold on, right? And these myths are incredibly dangerous to the well-being of survivors who've been targeted by malignant narcissists and psychopaths, right? The reason being that we've already seen our abusers in a sympathetic light. That's not what we need more of. We don't need more compassion and empathy for our abusers. We have already experienced that. A lot of abuse survivors have too much compassion, too much empathy for their abusers, and they try to rationalize and minimize and deny the extent of the abuse that they experienced because the abuser had a bad childhood, or perhaps the abuser had trauma. And I'm here to tell you also that it's also a myth that all abusers have bad childhoods or that they have trauma. If a psychopath is born the way that he or she is, then they were born that way, regardless of family upbringing. Now, I know that nature and nurture work together, and of course, biological predisposition does interact with the environment to produce these types of disorders. But sometimes these brain abnormalities exist prior to any kind of childhood programming. So we really have to take that into account. Not all abusers come from the traditionally abusive family that we think they do. In fact, there's been research that shows that people with narcissistic traits actually develop from families that overvalue them, that spoil them, that give them a sense of entitlement, an excessive sense of entitlement. And those narcissistic traits can later become full-fledged narcissistic personality disorder. Now, that doesn't happen in all cases, but we have to really let go of this myth that all abusers had a traumatic upbringing, because that's simply not true. Some abusers do come from traumatic upbringings, but guess what? So do survivors. Survivors of abuse in adulthood can also come from childhood abuse, and they choose not to abuse others. In fact, their experiences taught them how to not treat people. Next time you are tempted to rationalize, deny, and minimize an abuser's actions because they had a bad childhood or because of their presumed trauma, because of this assumption of trauma, just remember, not all abusers come from traumatic childhoods. And even if they did, it does not excuse their abuse. There is no excuse for abuse. There are many abuse survivors who do not choose to abuse. Abuse is still a choice. And even though it's a disorder, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's very similar to any other mental illness, because unlike schizophrenia or unlike bipolar disorder, these disorders, these people know exactly what they're doing. They can intellectually distinguish between right and wrong. They are not in a state of psychosis or despair, at least not despair at witnessing the pain that they inflict on others. In fact, a lot of them gain sadistic pleasure out of causing pain. They have that intellectual, cognitive ability, cognitive empathy to be able to assess whether or not their victim is hurting, whether or not their victim is in pain, and they choose to inflict more of that pain instead of coming to their aid. They just lack that affective empathy to even care about the harm that their actions cause, and a lot of them enjoy this game. If they are on the malignant end of the spectrum, and many of the abusers that we talk about are, they are unlikely to change in the long term because their behavior rewards them. These are hardwired behaviors that have been present since birth. Or at a very young age. And It's a myth, it's a fantasy to believe that we can ever change an abuser. They would want to have to change for themselves, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of intensive therapy and a willingness to change. That's the most important part. And in these disorders, an unwillingness to change is inherent in these disorders. So we have to remember that. We have to take that into account. If you want to learn more about these myths, I dismantle them in a new Psych Central article, which I'll leave the link to in the description box below. I'll talk to you guys soon, and until next time, take care.